Hello everyone, my name is Small Observer, and I have here some more scary Reddit readings. It is spooky time, so we're going to get to it. But first, there's 3 things I need for you to know. Number 1, I understand that many of you like the inflection of my voice. So I'll do my best to give you just that, my inflections. Also, number 2, and this is 2, I have not read through these. So, when I'm afraid and you see my fear, it will be real. Because if you have been following my channel for any amount of time, you would know that I had to stop doing these because I get scared, really scared, and my scumbag brain comes back to me when I'm trying to rest in the night, and it comes back and it gets me good. So I'm going to do this for you, so understand that this is a great sacrifice. Right. The third thing that I need you all to know is I don't really have a British accent. I am working on perfecting one. I've been working for years. I'm not very good at it. I guess I just need to watch more British comedies or shows or what have you, just to get the gist of it down on how to really pronounce words correctly. If you were listening to 1 and 2, you could tell that all of that was awful. And the reason why I'm practicing the British accent is because I want to do another cooking with smiling video, and I'm going to cook a real dish, and I want to make this thing as professional as I possibly can, because I don't know, I just don't want to put any more garbage out. And I hope this isn't garbage, but here we go. We're gonna go for it. Okay, starting with the first story, and I don't know if you can see that, but that is a lot. I got a lot of reading. Well, it is 16 font because I'm getting old and I can't see anymore, but here we go. Okay, here's my question, and please try to be comprehensive about it. This is something I haven't spoke to anyone. It may sound messed up. That's why I need to see if someone has experienced this. So, have you ever been rapish or have a sexual encounter with an unseen entity? My story starts after I hung out with some friends having a couple of beers, not enough to be drunk, and 1 small brownie with weed, something I've tried before and hadn't had too much of it. Anyways, my roomie and I decided to leave. It was around 1 a.m. when we arrived, and each of us entered our rooms. With that amount of beer and weed, I should sleep like a baby. Everything was fine until I felt pressure on my chest and woke up and I couldn't move, like sleep paralysis. But the thing that shocked me was that suddenly my right leg was pushed up and flexed. Then it took my wrists and moves them on to the pillow. What happened next was very confusing for me. I was shaking and I have a strange feeling of violent pressure. I was confused and I couldn't move. When it ended, I was nauseous and ran into the bathroom to throw up. The next day, I asked my roommate if she heard something during the night. She only heard me running and throwing up. She asked why, but I wasn't able to tell her. My experience was unrealistic. Perhaps she would think I'm crazy. Can you be honest and tell if someone or you know had ever suffered something like that? Wow, that's rough. Rape is a serious thing, and it's even more serious, I would think, if it's coming from a demonic entity. And I've actually heard of stories like this before, but you just got to take it with a grain of salt. And I guess if it's never happened to you, be grateful and hope that it doesn't. But let's read some of the responses. And I'm going to apologize here because I didn't read the user's name, the user that posted this story. All of these stories have been lifted from Reddit, and if I find this user's name, I will post it in the video so that you can see it. Here's some of her responses. Some of the responses that was received. From Iron Triceratops. This has been a semi-common occurrence throughout history. That's why tales of incubi and succubi have existed since at least the time of the Crusades. I experienced something similar in 1998, when I was 14. I wasn't under the influence of anything, but experienced a gentler version of that while sleeping in the afternoon. It actually felt pretty good, but I experienced acute anxiety for about 2 hours afterwards. Needless to say, I didn't fall back to sleep. Unchatraj says, you may want to post in R occult or R psychic or R astral travel. You can also Google something like an entity raped me during sleep paralysis and check out some of those results. There are a couple of techniques that you can use to stop it by breaking the sleep paralysis, like trying to wiggle your finger or scrunch up your face like you've tasted something nasty. It's something that many people have experienced, and I've had something try this with me a couple of times. But the pattern I've noticed is it tends to happen when I'm in a bad place, emotionally or mentally. We attract what we put out in the world. If you're in a rough place or feeling a lot of fear, it's more likely to happen. Getting yourself into a better spot will help to prevent it. There are lots of resources online about how to work on this. Azul says, thanks. I wanted to see if I wasn't losing my mind. I'm a positive person. Had many experiences during my childhood, but nothing like this. When you're not emotionally stable, this happens, but the strange part is I was fine and I was happy. I guess drugs lowered my guard. So, the person who posted the original story of her terrible experience, her name is Azul_11 on Reddit. If she put her real name, I would not tell you what her real name is. I just want to give her credit for the story. And if you can find a post on Reddit and you have an experience to share, it seems like she wouldn't mind if someone shared their story with her. Maybe it will help bring some sense of peace to her that she is stable-minded and isn't losing it. Under the Crowd says, I have a friend that had a similar experience. She didn't have any alcohol or marijuana in her system. Hers was way more sinister. She felt like it was a demon, a pleasure demon, that was trying to take over her. The more she resisted, the more pleasure it would give her. Azul. After that, was she feeling guilty? Like she knows it was terrible, but also went away in extreme and never experienced pleasure? Under the Crowd. She didn't feel guilty. She was afraid. She described it like you're just describing it. Dalao Hu says, I rescued a girl from an incubus once. Because drugs are in the picture, it's possible this is not paranormal. You always got to look at pedestrian answers first. Her experience was different from yours, in that her sensations were only at the genitals. Let me know if you want me to help you figure this out. Is this still happening to you? And that was the end of those particular comments. And thinking back on it, I kind of wish I didn't read that. So I will put a disclaimer at the beginning of this video, because I don't want to trigger any terrible experiences for anybody. Okay, this is another story. It was written by somebody else, and we will go on into it. Happened a few years ago. Still freaks me out. By 1895 farmhouse __. Not the only weird thing that's happened to me, but definitely the scariest. I was living in a duplex with my ex and best friend. My ex's mom didn't like me very much, which I think is important to the story. One night I had this sleep paralysis thing going on where you wake up in another dream. Except I didn't know I was asleep because I'm in my room. My ex was laying next to me in our bed. I turn over to him and he sits up and starts screaming in this weird demonic voice. His jaw unhinged like it was wider than human mouth could stretch. I wake up from that dream. Again, I think I'm awake because I'm in my house. So I get up and the house is pitch black. I'm trying to find a light switch and I can't. I leave our room and go into the hallway. I can see light coming from under the other door where my friend or roommate slept. The door opens and my ex's mom is in the room. I got this horrible feeling of something's being very wrong. She sort of floats out of the room past me, and I'm trying to hide in the shadows, but she sees me. Then I actually really wake up, and I'm a little freaked out. I go into the kitchen for some water, come back into the bedroom, and flip on the light. Underneath me on the bed, right where I could have been laying, there's a big hole burnt in the sheet. I'm not talking like cigarette burn. I'm talking like 6 by 12 hole right under my chest area. I had just put those sheets on before I went to bed that night. They were clean white sheets. I would have noticed a giant hole with burnt edges when I made the bed. I don't know what happened, but I think something tried to attack me on the astral plane while I was asleep. Any ideas? Edit. I hope this doesn't break the no dream rule because I woke up with the evidence of something weird. Mods, if this isn't cool, let me know. Okay. Now I'm going to read the responses. What the responses that she received. Okay, I'm not saying this user's name. Okay. As you all know, I don't use profanity. Alright. I think that as an adult, for someone to not use profanity is a sign of their maturity. My cousin, who I grew up with, disagrees. To each their own. So, that being the case, I'm not reading this user's username. And not only that, I've already read past other profanity, so as I read, I clean these stories up. I'm weird, I know. Anyway, no idea, but that is terrifying. 1895 farmhouse __ says, I couldn't sleep with the lights off for a good while. Haha. Peachy Indio Chick says, I hope that doesn't ever happen again. That's so scary. 1895 Formar says, it hasn't so far. Some little things here and there, but nothing on that level of scariness. Jules 1016 says, it reminds me of something that I experienced like 10 years ago. I was within my bed having a nightmare about this girl who was obsessed with me. I'm a woman, and I wasn't in love with her, so she used to spy me, call me, send me texts saying that she knew where I was and with whom, and generally stalked me. In the nightmare, she was under me in my bed, and she had like 6 or 8 arms and was trying to take me with her. I woke up scared, and I was about to scream, calling for my mother, who was in the next room next to mine. I heard this laugh. It was the laugh of a little kid. It was creepy, since it was like 3 or 4 a.m. and there were no toddlers at home or any kind in the neighborhood. I screamed for my mom, and she answers and said, don't move, don't get off bed. And I asked her if she had heard it, the laughing, and she said yes. We waited a couple of minutes, and my mom come into my room and slept with me that night. Wow. Bring Back McCarthyism says, the demons that pose as kids are the creepiest. Jules 1016 said, that's what one of my friends said, that this was a demon. 1895 Farmar says, dude, that's scary. Jules 1016 says, tell me about it. Zombie Slayer 287 says, what happened to the stalker girl now? Jules 1016 says, I don't know. It ended because I talked to her and basically told her that it was me, not her. I told her that she was almost perfect. She wasn't at all. But that I wasn't able to love anyone at that time in my life. I apologized because of it, and that was that. She hated me anyways, but I haven't seen her since those awful days. Maybe she was trying to get me used in other ways, like witchcraft or something. I live in Mexico, so it's not uncommon. Remind me never to go to Mexico. Let me rephrase that. Remind me never to go back to Mexico. Oh my goodness. Anyway, my dog was right. My dog was right. My dog was right says, sheesh, thank goodness for moms. That sounds terrifying. Whatever happened with the girl? Jules 1016. I don't know. It ended because I talked to her and basically told her that it was me, not her. I told her that she was almost perfect. She wasn't at all. But that I wasn't able to love anyone at the time of my life. Apologized because of it, and that was it. AFCC 1313 says, okay, that's it. I'm out of the sub. I'm what you did. Okay. OPCO 47. I had a similar a few weeks ago, minus the burn mark, which sounds really weird. I woke up in my room and got up to go see my brother standing there in the dark. When I got closer to him, his mouth opened wide like one of the infected, and I Am Legend, and his face turned evil, started to distort into a longer, paler, demon-like version of him. I felt very terrified and put my hands to cover my face, as I felt that if it wanted to get me inside me, it wasn't as crazy as yours. I felt very terrified and put my hands to cover my face, as I felt as if it wanted to get inside me. It wasn't as crazy as yours, but I have never, ever woken up in my room like that to a version of my brother I thought was actually real. He was staying in the house that week, so I really thought it was him. I really thought it was real. It made me think astral realm possibility as I began in my own house. Plus the feeling I got, which left me really actually scared. LJ1205E says, it made me think that your ex's mom had much more hate for you than that it must have burned a hole through you. I believe that bad energy travels. It's probably good this person is an ex. 1895 farmhouse underscore says, I think she dabbled in black magic. We previously stayed with her in her house for a little bit, and I had like 6 shadow people swirl into our room one night, and one of them laid down in the bed between me and my ex. My dog was right says, yikes, what the blank? That's really freaky. Glad you're okay. I can't imagine how something like that happens, and I agree that you definitely would have noticed a hole that size when you laid down for the night. Very, very strange. Aqua61 says, hate it when that happens. I get a bit of sarcasm from that. Anyway, Undefined 2020 says, no one asked for pictures of the burned sheet? Skeptic. 1895 farmhouse. Oh, this was years ago, and I have been through so many phones since then, but I'll swear on anything that this is true. I've had experiences with shadow people and apparitions and stuff so far. For some reason, weird stuff just happens to me. Alright, moving on. And again, I'm not saying that any of these stories are false. I know there are some creepypasta stories out there that people make up. But I also believe that people have real experiences. I've had some real experiences that happened while I was wide awake, and it happened, and there were witnesses, and it happened. But I'm going to refrain from telling those stories right now because I don't want to get powered to anything stupid. But yeah, people have experiences, and they can't explain them, and even if they are easily explained, sometimes they're not. Like, I was talking with a guy, and he had told me that he had just moved up here to Washington from California, and I was like, oh really, what brings you up here? And he kind of looks at me and he was like, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And that's when it clicked in my head, oh okay. And I was like, well, you would be amazed at what I believe. And so he began to tell me how he moved up here to get away from an ex. If I remember correctly, if I recall correctly, he said at one point they were having an argument. He was having an argument with her. She was involved with witchcraft. And he said while they were arguing, things were flying across the room and hitting him. Things that she didn't physically throw at him. Things were just flying across the room and hitting him. So yeah, I wouldn't blame him for getting away from that psycho chick, because anybody crazy enough to get involved with that kind of black magic, real magic, it's like a drug, and you just want more and more power, and it just wraps you in, and you just don't want that kind of, you don't want to get involved with it, because it's a double, it's a problem. It could be a major problem in your life, and you don't want that. Anyway, still creeps me out by just a cosplayer. I know this sounds crazy, but I swear it's the truth. A couple of years back, my mother and I went on a road trip to New York. On the way there, a couple of times I felt like I was being watched, and I thought I saw something in the woods as we left my home state. I chalked it up to just my glasses or that I'm tired, but when we got back from New York and we were just entering my home state, that feeling returned, but now it was stronger, and I definitely saw something terrifying in the woods. I can only describe it as something similar to the Slender Man. I also saw another figure. It resembled a hooded man. My mother saw it, but when she did, something even creepier happened. Her eyes went wide and she turned the car around and started driving back to New York for a moment. Afterwards, she snapped out of it and had to pull over. She didn't know what came over her. Her description of her experience made me think she had been briefly possessed. Neither of us have ever been that scared in our lives. Wow. And these are some of the responses. Epic fairy try hard. Epic fail try hard. I can relate, and I find your story plausible. The following story... Oh, okay. No, that was just the one response. Now, the following stories are found in the subreddit Ask Reddit. Listener discretion is advised. Alright, so if you don't want to listen past this, stop the video now. Oh, you still here? Okay, here we go. Late night hikers. What is the creepiest thing you've seen while hiking? JHFK. I'm copying and pasting this over from an older Ask Reddit post which asked a similar question. I used to often spend my summers bouldering with my friends by a relatively large forest that was about an hour and a half away from where I used to live. We used to spend some of the nights camping out there just to save some travel costs and time. Anyway, I think this was roughly like the third or fourth time we were out there. My friend and I had left all her camping gear and her rucksack just outside her tent. Well, we definitely think she did anyway. The next morning we found her boots and a few clothes, and all of her chalk powder had disappeared. We figured that it could have been completely feasible that she misplaced it. Although we were quite sure that they were next to her tent, we didn't really want to believe that they were stolen. Anyway, we didn't read too much into this and just stupidly said to ourselves that perhaps she left them by the boulders and some animal took them. I know it sounds stupid, but it was very reasonable to us at the time. Anyway, fast forward a year and we're at the same spot as usual, sitting by the tents and chilling after some food. Mind you, it's pitch black out. The only camp area is lit by the fire. I go somewhere a bit out of sight for a slash, and what do I see? A dude in the full-on ghillie suit laying on his stomach looking right towards our campsite. I kind of stood there frozen as this dude clocks that I've seen him, and he just bolts out of there. I don't know whether this event to the year prior was related to the ghillie guy, but this definitely has stuck with all of us. We haven't been back there since, which is a real shame. Wow. Ruined by some dude having fun in a ghillie suit. But who knows what his intentions were. Tall_guy says, not hiking so much as car camping, but we were way out there in the middle of nowhere on BLM land in Colorado. We drove for an hour and a half down a Forest Service road and didn't see another soul. We could see headlights and hear cars from miles away from our campsite. It's not like someone could have snuck up and noticed. We had 3 cars with us and 8 people. Just got done eating dinner, cleaned up. It was getting dark, so we went back to the cars real quick before hitting our tents for the night. Somebody had slashed the front right tire on each of the 3 cars with what happened to be a box cutter. Everyone thought it was a prank, but it became very apparent very quickly that it wasn't. All of us were beyond spooked, like panicking. Scary to watch, spooked. We all had spares. The one dude had a gun, so we threw in our donuts, and while that guy literally guarded us, we got out of there. I still have nightmares about it sometimes, just knowing that there was some person probably watching us, maybe wanting to harm us. Makes me feel physically ill to this day. Well, this blew up to answer some questions. This was south of Gypsum, and it was 100% not private land. This was a marked forest road, service road in an area with dispersed camping. I had visited several times before. There were 3 guys and 5 girls. The guys were all together cooking the whole time, leading up to us discovering their tires being slashed. Those people are my best friends, and this would be wildly uncharacteristic of any of them. For those wondering how we didn't hear it, our cars were parked 30 plus yards away from our fire tents, and a car coming down a road is easy to pick out from the sounds of nature. A gentle hissing gets lost in the wind. We heard it as soon as we started walking up. The tires were slashed on the exact same spot on the side wall. It would be almost impossible for something on the road to puncture tires like that. Also, there was no cell service. We called the cops and ranger as soon as we got back to the highway, told them exactly what FS road we were on, and gave them coordinates. But there isn't a lot for them to do. Cop told us it was good we were packing and to be careful out there. Shinji 246 says, this should absolutely be at the top of this thread. I've read far too many. It was their stories to get this far. Who is upvoting these stories? Someone with direct intent to harm you, acting in a pattern that made more than clear it couldn't have been an animal. Consistency with tire slashes being the same one on each time. I'm always extremely cautious about things like this, though. The thought that you would be that far into that far out into nowhere, and happen to be somewhere where someone else was. I always tell my friends, when going to the middle of nowhere, it is not like murderers just go out into the woods, hoping someone will stop at this random spot in the middle of nowhere. Which makes me think that the spot that you guys chose must have had some sort of reason you all stopped there. Like a nice clearing or some attractive feature that made you choose that spot. Perhaps that's the same reason the person chose that spot. Here's my guess though. Someone was operating some sort of drug operation further down the road. They had no desire to actually harm or fight you, or fight with all of you. But they didn't want you going any further into the area, as you came too close for their comfort. They knew slashing your tires methodically would cause you to get out of there, and it worked like a charm. Disabling only one tire on each, and assuming you would all have a spare as most cars do, just enough damage to make you scared, but not enough to keep you from leaving, or cause you to call the police to the location. Wow, that's a astute assessment. I'm not going to ask how that OP knows that. But, hey, some people, they think like that. Yukon_C14 says, while it did not happen during the hike, rather than camping, it was still the creepiest thing I've experienced out there. I was working at a summer camp for kids, and we went on an overnight outing. Had a cougar circle our camp from around 11 p.m. to roughly 5 a.m. It was crying out, hoping one of us would separate from the group. I stayed up all night with bear spray and a hatchet, keeping an eye on it with the other staff. Well, Sayonara says, I go hiking in the woods that permeate my town sometimes so late that I get to see the sunrise out there. The strangest thing I ever saw was what I could only describe as a shanty town. It was built up seemingly overnight deep into the woods. Simple, yet hovels made of scrap metal and bed sheets, and a small fire pit that someone had made out of the old tire, with the fire still burning. But that wasn't the weird part. The weird part was that this was all past midnight when I found this place, and it was quiet as a grave. There was no one there. Someone made the trouble of getting a fire going and then left it. From the look of it, this place could hold about a dozen or so people, and yet there was nothing there but the fire they abandoned and whatever possessions they had left in the shanties. Wow. Scary. So, that's it. That's it for now. Now, I do have some more stories to read, but I have to be mindful of my time because I work in Seattle and I don't sleep in Seattle. I live in Seattle, but I sleep in Spanaway. So I have to be mindful of my time and how late I'm up. Mom used to make me go to bed, but now that I'm a big boy, I'm making me go to bed. But wow, those were some scary stories, and you just never know what kind of creeps you'll meet when you're out there camping and you think it's just you and your friends. So be careful. If you're going to go camping, be careful. I do own a firearm, and when I go, I do my best to keep it with me. It depends. I don't just, like, if I'm going to a restaurant, with friends, I'm not gonna take my gun with me. But sometimes I do take it with me. If I'm going someplace that's super unfamiliar, but I wouldn't just take it any old place, because I know there's a lot of places that don't allow people to have firearms. But in the state of Washington, if you have a concealed carry, you can carry. I try to avoid places where there's a sign up that says no firearms. So I don't want to, that's just how I think. But there's been times where I've been places and I thought, I don't know what's going to happen, But at the same time, I've lived 30 plus years and not needed a firearm. So anyway, it is what it is. But if I'm going camping, I'm taking my firearm with me, because you never know what you're going to meet out there. Be it someone trying to harm your life, or just a wild animal. And you might think you're big and strong enough to fight a cougar,